Hello there. Welcome to another Producing Actor Talks. Today we have a great guest. He's made himself a self-made filmmaker, and he's had great success in the festival circuit. His name is Pat Mitchell, and let's wait for him to join. Hello, how are you? Great to have you here. Welcome. We're just waiting on, there we go. Hopefully this is it. We were having a little bit of difficulty connecting, but I think we got it.
Yeah, you got it.
We got it.
Yeah, what's up?
Pat, so tell us, for those of you that just joined or that will watch this, we've been having a little difficulties trying to connect, but so we're gonna go right into talking about you. What was
Hmm.
your dream growing up? What did you want to be when you were growing up?
Oh, wow, it's a loaded question. Yeah, so it's been stages. I think when I was like really, really young, like when I was like a kid, the first thing I wanted to do was be, I think it was like a chef or a fireman.
Ah,
But yeah, but I still cook for myself, so that's good. But
nice.
basically, yeah, I ended up wanting to be a filmmaker. I didn't even know there was really a word for it. Like I went through middle school sort of interested in TV and film and stuff, and basically I kind of just grew more into it over time.
Okay.
When I got into like I guess high school or middle school, high school. I always had films in the back of my mind, and I didn't know how to really make them. I knew how to make music, and I wanted to be a music producer at one point, but then I realized how lonely it is making music for somebody. So that's where films came in, and I've always loved films since I was like little, and I always wanted to know how to do it. So I eventually just taught myself how to, and yeah, and it's always been one of those things where you look at Hollywood films and you're like, I want to do something like that. And like you never have the budget to do anything like that. So it's
Yeah,
like, how do I do it with the budget that I have? And that's basically been like sort of the question and the quest since the beginning.
absolutely.
So yeah.
So Pat, do you remember that one time when you said, "Okay, I'm gonna start exploring, trying to make a film"? What was that like? Was it like a
Ooh.
moment that was a decision-making moment, or was it a period of time where you started like trying new different things? Because to be self-made, it takes a lot to make a film,
Yeah.
right? The people that have produced, and for those that haven't, it takes a lot. Whether your film ends up being the best film ever or your film sucks is still a
Right.
ton of work.
Right.
So do you remember that time where you were like, okay, I'm gonna commit to learning this?
Yeah, no, it was I remember I was working in a grocery store and I bought myself a camera. It was really
Ooh.
like really small. It still had the tape recording on it, and I basically went around my neighborhood and I started filming stuff in the middle of the night because I like how things look at night more than they look in the day. So I just walked around my city over here and I just started filming random places in the dark, and yeah, and then since then it was like, okay, let me try to make a trailer or something. And I started making fake trailers for movies that I wanted to make. And it was just one of those things where it's like, okay, how do I just create like the smallest of a story? And you watch trailers which explains a story in a very small detail. So I was like, if I can master that, it'd be easier to make something a little bit longer on the other side. And so that's what I kept doing. I kept just basically testing myself, seeing how much I could accomplish with the smallest stuff that I've had, and eventually it turned into me reading Hollywood scripts and I would tell myself, I'm like, oh, I like this movie. And so the first script I ever wrote for myself was a Batman script, believe it or not.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So it's not really a Batman script. It's actually Commissioner Gordon. I had a whole storyline for Commissioner Gordon because I was in love with what Gary Oldman did in The Dark Knight, and I just thought it'd be really cool to see a character before he was a cop, and so I started writing that for myself just to learn how to write the script, and like it really is a whole script. It was 140 pages.
Oh wow.
Yeah, 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 and
How many rewrite? So
yeah,
give me a little more detail on these steps that you're taking, because when you tell me your story, it seems like it just happened one thing after the other, and it seems so easy, but I know that it's a long process, like I was saying
right.
prior. So what was it like to sit down for the first time? And
Mhm.
because even if you're great at writing, even if you're
Right.
great with words, it's different to be a book writer, a novel writer, than a screenplay writer. So,
Oh, of
how
course.
is it that you figured out how to go from point A to Z?
Well, yeah, it all started with reading Hollywood scripts and trying to figure out, like, reverse engineer what they did, and then writing my own, hoping that I can compare the two and not feel like I'm pretending to be something. Um, yeah, so that my first process of writing things, because my first script I did, the first film I did was actually someone else wrote the script for it, and I actually read it and I rewrote what I wanted out of it. And I had like a bunch of scripts of my own, but they were always like way too over budget and stuff like that. And but basically it was just this thought process that, wanted to create a window. And I keep saying this all the time. It's like when you watch a film, you're basically looking into a window, which is like a screen. And then there's another world on the other side of the window. And it's like if you're a really good filmmaker, the best thing you could do, like instead of just writing a movie where you're looking at characters acting, you really have to think even deeper. They're not watching just characters on screen. You're actually watching a whole nother world through a portal. And what you're doing is you're writing the context of that world where someone could watch it from the outside and believe what they're watching. And, so that's the thing that really played with me for a long time. Like, because I would write like these scenes, and then it really did feel like just actors talking, and that's when I started learning like the intricacies of like how life works and how people observe life, and like even me and you conversating right now, you know, the fact that you did research on me and you know my back history, and I did research on you and you know my back history, it's kind of an interesting dynamic to talk to you in a way where I know so much more about you than just meeting you face to face, like without any type of research.
Right.
And those things really help. So, like when I'm writing a character, um, I get into this phase of like, how do I explain the character before the camera turns on and after it turns off? So when you watch
And
Apples, Oranges, Lemons, and Limes, yeah, I go into this sense where I talk about what happened before the party and what happened after the party. Like you just kind of have this idea like these characters existed before you got to see them.
yeah,
And then you start realizing, yeah, these characters had their own history and their own past. And then even when the movie ends, I still leave you with a sense of wonder, like what comes after?
there's a
And
story after,
yeah,
right?
and
So,
those are like the biggest sort of things. But yeah, the moment where I realized that I really wanted to do it was when I realized like I won an award for my first film. Um, the first film I ever did, I won an award for it. And I was like, wow, I never win awards for anything. And it's one of those things like, okay, maybe I'm really good at this. I don't know. And I love films and stuff, so it's just like kind of like a daunting task. It's like, okay, how do I be better? How do I be better? How do I be better? And it really did grow kind of gradually. Like it is challenging, but in my case, it just became an adventure, and
Right.
I just kept going, and I never had any expectations of what would
Yeah.
happen. or where I would end up, or
You were just
mainly I was doing it
enjoying the moment, yeah?
exactly. And I was just basically creating for me. And then I started thinking, let me create for other people. And then my last film was, let me create for the world.
Yeah,
And, and it really became a world sort of thing. And I didn't expect as big as it would be. And it did, like, it really touched a lot of people in different places.
yeah.
And yeah, and I tried my hardest to write internationally so that somebody else, like, who doesn't live in America or live anywhere near me or even know who I am would be able to relate to it. And
Amazing.
it was basically a challenge. Yeah.
You said something very important, which was we all know, we all assume that everyone is paying attention to the fact that the character exists before and after the film, right? And
Hmm.
I love that you bring it up because, especially when you're writing for the first time, and it's the same thing with acting. It's like the scene begins, but you're not, you haven't appeared in this world as soon as this scene starts. You're coming from somewhere. So, where are you coming from? Because it's going to be different, the energy that you bring, that you show up with, depending on where what just happened before this scene. Same thing with whenever you're writing. What if you are so aware that there's a before and there's an after? I love it because as a creator, it's easier to know your characters and to show more depth, even if you don't explain that there was a before and an after,
Yeah.
which is extremely powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, do you develop a bio prior to writing or after you write at all?
Well, it's strange. My whole process is completely different from a lot of people. And even when I explain it to people, it doesn't make sense to them. So I, the way I try to not to even surprise myself when I'm writing is to not write like I don't do like a lot of people. They do the outline. They want to see where the movie goes or where it ends up, and they want it the whole bullet points and stuff. I kind of mastered over time to just write with a stream of consciousness. A lot, and there's other people who do it, but basically, I just start with two characters. I have like sort of the images that I want to see throughout the movie, and then I just think about the psychology of people in general, and I just start typing. And it's funny because a lot of times when you write without a predestined location or plan or where you're heading, you start discovering rather than creating, if that makes any sense. Like you're just writing characters walking, and then like you discover something about your character. And a lot of people, this is a problem that some people have as a writer. You're so fixed on where you want to go. Like you have this predetermined destination of where you want to end up in your film. And I think it gets in the way because true inspiration is basically when things come out of nowhere. And a lot of times, if you write to a point where you know where you want to go, and then you're fighting against the things that you discover in your own film while writing, you're kind of taking away the surprise that someone else will watch from you. Because if you're
Absolutely.
surprising yourself, yeah, because if you surprise yourself by discovering something, you're like, oh, I never would have thought of that. Why do I think of that now? Like, because it's a surprise to you, it's definitely a surprise to the people watching.
Yeah.
So you really want to take advantage of those moments and tell yourself, well, let me change the outcome of the story if I need to, because there's something here. And a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people tend to try to stick with their predetermined sort of bullet points that they have. And for me, I just always had a great time just streaming, just thinking about two people walking somewhere and what would they say? And they're in a situation, what would happen? What could happen? And then like I basically just write until I see something that would be a good plot point, and then I go back to the beginning of the script and I start writing stuff to fill out the exposition of something I discovered. And it worked out better for me because then I'm
Yeah.
writing like these really crazy stories where like you know you're filming like this romantic sort of comedy sort of thing, then all of a sudden there's a gunshot and then there's running. And it's like, who
Yeah.
would see that in a romantic movie? And I just like, it was one of those things where I was like, I can't take that away now. Like, it's in my head now. So if it's in my head, obviously yeah, I should act on it. And yeah,
It's
so I try
beautiful.
not
It's
to.
beautiful, Pat, because the thing is that I always say that at the end of the day, if you allow it to, whether you do an outline or not, the story writes itself.
Yeah, yeah,
So, with that being said, if you are connected to your conscience, then you are allowing all that inspiration to flow through you. And that's why you're able to get from beginning to end. And that is the reason why a lot of times we have an outline and we have a story, and the film ends up being something completely different
yeah,
because
yeah.
you outline, you put it all together, you write it, you're done, and then your conscience is like, no, no, that's not it. That's not the way. Rewrite,
Hmm.
erase. And it's, and sometimes it might be more work because you didn't, I love this, you didn't listen from the beginning.
Yeah,
That's great to hear. Yeah.
yeah. And it's, it's one of those things where when you get writer's block, and a lot of people get it, it's like, I don't know where to go. I don't know where to go. It's like, well, stop thinking about where you would go and think about where you wouldn't go. Maybe you might find
Mm-hmm.
something. And a lot of people forget to do that. And it's like, yeah, think about the things that you won't think about. Like the things that's so off putting where it's like, oh, I would never do that. Maybe that's the place to
Mm.
go. Maybe that's the place to take it. And most of the time, people find themselves out of writer's block because you just get kind of trapped in the things you want to accomplish. But then you realize like there's so many different things you can accomplish, but you're just so focused on something. And sometimes you focus on it too long. And then you end up having writer's block because you're focusing on too much of where the destination that you wanted to go.
Yeah.
Um, and then if you think about the things that you don't want to do in a movie, sometimes those are like the better choices because then you get out your way. You get out of your own sort of, you get out of your boundaries and you start thinking, okay, if I won't see this in my own movie, well, maybe it's going to be something shocking to other people watching your movie. And it's just one of those things where it's like the more you do it, the more you accept yourself doing it. And the more
Yeah.
that you accept yourself doing it, the more it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of people, they just fix on what they want to be, and then they just forget, like, you could be anything. It's a really wide range of things you could be. Like, you don't have to be this one thing. And that's why when you watch my film, and I tell everybody, like, the film is so many different genres. Like, it's not just a solid romance movie. It's not a solid drama movie. It's not a solid, like, you know, thriller movie. Like, I kind of didn't want to be one thing. Like, I just, wherever my mind took me, I went.
I
And
love it. I
yeah,
love it. I love it because it has your signature. It's nice to see um how close to listening to yourself you are. I think it's such great advice because that writer's block comes from having to have an answer that makes sense.
yeah,
Exactly what you said. And what if this does not is not supposed to make sense? Because
exactly.
we're living in a world where anything can be created if you wanted to.
Hmm.
So what would you, so that one was the first project was the first project that you wrote was a feature, but now this latest project was a short film that is more like a medium film, no?
Yeah,
Because it's a little
yeah,
longer. What is it,
yeah,
like 40, 42,
45
41,
minutes. Yeah,
45 minutes?
yeah.
Okay, yeah. But it goes by really fast. And why did you choose, I mean, at a certain point where you like, it might be too long, I'm gonna cut it down. Did you shoot it a little bit longer and you went to the editing room and cut it shorter, or
That's a good.
what's the story?
Yeah, no, that's a good. Yeah, that's a good question.
Yes.
Yeah, I when I wrote it, when I wrote it was only 30 pages.
Mm,
But the thing is, when I kept making the movie, you know, I when I tend to drive, I have these ideas in my head of what I want to see, and I was like, oh, I should do that. I should try that. And a lot of like the bigger sort of spectacle moments in the film were just like sort of add-ons that I had driving towards set and away from set at times. And I was like, it would be really cool to see this. And I would make like my own sort of time to experiment on that and actually do that sort of scene. And um, like if you saw like Apples, Oranges, and Limes, the scene where they're running away from a car, that wasn't in the original script. That was actually just me thinking if the guy's running in the middle of darkness, like he's in the middle of the nighttime, and it's like, okay, what's the dangers that could happen when you're walking in the middle of nothing?
Yeah.
And like I just thought, yeah, what if a car almost hit these people? And you know, it's one of those things where you want to torture the audience watching, and it's like that whole
For
Hitchcock
sure.
thing, yeah. It's like, and it's like, okay, well, let's torture the audience a little bit. Okay, they almost get hit by a car, and then, you know, and that's actually my voice screaming, "Get
Oh
out the
no.
road," which I thought was hilarious. But no, it's just one of those things where, yeah, you I'm trying. Am I getting off topic a little bit? I'm trying to
No, no,
remember
no,
what the
no, no.
question was. Yeah,
So
yeah.
the question was why was it that you did it 45 minutes? And it's because you kept on adding things.
Yes,
And,
I kept.
it is what it is. Again, you listen to your conscience and it had
Yeah.
major success. But how long did it take you to shoot? How does that change for you, the actors, the locations? How does that throw off your entire pre-production?
Oh yeah, no. No, it took like it only took 5 days to shoot. 5
Okay.
nights actually, not even days, nights. Like 5 days, 5 hours or less. 5 nights, 5 hours or less in the middle of the night. And yeah, no, it was just I'd never had a fixed time of how long it would be. And even like when I submit to festivals, I would get festivals that they would turn down my film because of how long it was. And I remember telling myself, I don't want to cut my film for anybody. Like it's just one of those situations where it's like a lot of people they're like, okay, you got to cut it for the festival. And it's like, no, but then it completely takes away from what I wanted to accomplish from my movie. So like it was one of those things where you stood up for yourself creatively and you told yourself like if the festival doesn't want it, the festival doesn't want it. But I can't to my intellect be like, okay, I have to cut down the movie just to get into this festival. And
Right.
it's going to completely take away from the pacing, the story, and everything. And then, like, then you start having these, like, kind of conscious ideas. There's two versions of your film out in the world. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't want that sort of severity. Like, I don't. And I just, like,
Yeah.
I want everybody to see the same movie. And so I made a conscious effort to tell myself, like, just do you. Like, just do whatever you want to do and stick by that because you can make a smaller version and then next thing you know there's someone out there wishing there was more to your movie when there really was more to your movie
Yeah.
and like you can't do that to yourself. So I
Yeah.
just told myself I'm gonna stick with exactly what I want it to be, and if you appreciate it you appreciate it, and if you don't it's
It's
fine. But
your
in a lot,
loss.
yeah, but in a lot of cases, I'm not gonna lie, in a lot of cases the festivals love the movie but it was too long for them to program.
Yeah,
And I was
the
like,
thing with
yeah,
that, so that I can explain it to people that are doing this for the first time, is that the reason I've heard that that happens is because whenever they choose to do short films, they have an amount set for it.
hmm
And so your film is taking the amount of two or three films that they would be showing. So even though your film is amazing, it would take that long and they wouldn't be able to show other films. But it's not because the film is bad or anything like that. That
hmm
is why, I think it's a great thing to know that if your idea is to create, to submit to film festivals, especially short film festivals, then you have to kind of stay around the 15-minute mark if
yeah,
if that's your intention. But I think it's completely understandable why you would create something and be like, this is it, this
yeah,
is
yeah,
this is
yeah.
what I want to bring to the world.
And it's funny because I'm very thankful because there's festivals where their max was 20 minutes and I still submitted my film hoping that they'd play. And I'm not gonna lie, some film festivals like, yeah, it was too good. We decided to put it in, and that actually happened with two festivals recently. There was one
How many
festival,
nominations? How
yeah,
many nominations did you finally get?
uh, nominations or wins, which
How many wins nominations?
okay,
Do you know the amount of nominations or no?
um, I do. It's 340 wins. I think it's 64 nominations that I didn't get it.
Damn.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm not gonna lie, that's a really big number. It got to a point where
That's
I
a
would go to
huge number.
yeah, I got to a point where I went to festivals and like I would talk to other filmmakers and I feel bad because it's like you never want to discourage anybody with whatever they accomplish. So there's literally been like times where I went to a festival and a lot of people be like, "Yeah, I won 12 awards for my film and I won, 16 awards for my film and I won 5, I won 12 and they're super happy and energetic about it." And like I was always yeah, I was always that
You're
guy. I
like,
was like,
don't
"Oh
ask
God."
me.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not gonna tell you.
So,
I'm not
so,
even gonna."
so, Pat, how
Yeah.
many submissions did you have to do? What's the percentage of acceptance?
For festivals?
Yeah, how many
Right now,
submissions in total have you done?
well, that's a really big number. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's like 45% actually got in
Okay, that's really good.
from. It's very good, and
So
it
you
was cool.
submitted to
Yeah,
about 600 festivals.
pretty much over the year. Yeah, I just committed, and some of them are free, some of them are not. But I remember at one point, I remember telling myself, if it's doing so well, let me just submit to everywhere that could possibly play it.
Absolutely.
Um, and it was just one of those things where it's like it wasn't really just for me, it was also for the actors and for the people involved. And it's like, yeah, if it's doing so well, like why hurt the movie by holding it back, I guess is the best way to say it. And it was just one of those things where I had ideas to stop. And then there was like sort of these like goals that never really thought you could reach. And then it's like, okay, well, in the sake of these goals, let me keep going because if I do or able to reach those goals, I can't tell myself I stopped myself from doing it. I can
Absolutely.
never say that to myself. So I just
Yeah.
kept going, and yeah, it made a really big impact. And I honestly, um, I'm still overwhelmed by a lot of that. It was, yeah, because it got to a point where I was getting really nervous and really frustrated. There was actually some festivals that gave me a lot of problems. Like they would say they loved the film and then they didn't program it, but then I find the film in their database having money made off of it. And
Yeah.
then they would force me to not be able to talk to them. Then they banned me and I was like, what is
I mean,
going on?
it's
Yeah.
a lot of festivals you're talking about, but also this is great in the sense that this speaks about the faith that you have in your career and the
Yeah.
love that you have for your career because you it's a sacrifice to invest the money submitting to festivals.
Yeah.
Um, is what would you say was your budget for all the submissions?
Oof.
Roughly, it doesn't have to, just so that people understand because they
Yeah,
can
sure.
get pretty pricey.
Yeah, the film itself was $1,200. I think I
Nice.
spent over 4,000 on
Yeah.
submission. Yeah, and it's like one of those things where it's like, oh wow, yeah, I really put myself in a. Well, it wasn't even that. I didn't really do anything to be honest. Like I loved every minute of it, so I'm not gonna pretend like it wasn't worth it. It was definitely worth it. But it was just one of those like moments where it's like, you know, you're so proud of your film and the people involved and the idea that it even exists because a lot of people, it's hard to make a film. It's
So
hard to make a
hard.
film. And yeah, and it's just one of those things where it's like, if I appreciate it and then the people, like all the comments and the people that have talked to me about the film and and I've had conversations with people all over the world. You, you know, I've talked to someone who was in Afghanistan who said they watched my film before Afghanistan turned into what it is today, and it was one of the last things they remember before Afghanistan became sort of the politic sort of thing haven that it is now, and I won't understand much of it. To hear those stories and to hear people say these things are incredible to me. And it's just, I never, and this guy was talking to me through an internet that was like, he wasn't even allowed to talk to me apparently. And he just wanted to talk. And it's crazy. And, and he talks, perfect, perfect English and everything. It's like, wow, you don't understand, like sometimes you don't understand the world until the world comes to you and start talking. And it's
Yeah.
like,
It's
it's
so
an
powerful
interesting point
how
of
you
view.
can
Yeah.
you can connect nowadays though, but also I love the fact that you said, I'm gonna make a movie that everyone can understand
Yes.
or that most people can understand, and that makes a big difference. Also, it's very important to give people this information because you think when you're gonna make your first film, you think it's just a film and it's done. I'm done shooting, and you don't plan for anything,
Right.
for post production, for anything, nothing that has to do, with working after. And it is a lot to have to submit and, get the poster, get a lot of things happen after.
Right.
So it's good to see how pricey it can be. With that being said, what do you do to keep your budget so low to shoot the movie?
Um, I
What would you
basically do.
suggest? What would you suggest to people that are telling me, Sarah, I don't have any money, I can't make a movie? And I tell them, look for your resources, the ones that you already have,
Right.
and go from there. So what is your advice?
It's pretty tough because the way I did it, like I was basically, well, I was basically the cameraman. I was the DP, the director, the writer, the editor. I did all of the posters, all of the media prints, all the editing, even the original song for the movie. My scorist Andrew did the score for the movie.
This is
But
like
yeah, I
five full-time jobs
yeah,
on one
no, yeah,
person.
exactly. Yeah, I saved money by just doing it myself, and it's not. It took years to learn a lot of that, and it was a lot of practice with other films and other things, and I basically just, it was a point where I was just like, okay, ever since ever since I started, and I know this sounds very cryptic, but ever since I started, I kind of knew for a fact that the only person who's ever going to care about the movie as much as you are is going to be you.
Yes,
Um, so
I love
yeah,
it.
yeah. So if you can't do it, you could expect someone else to do it, but everybody has their own problems, their own situations, things they have priority to, things that they put first. And it's one of those things where it's like, I understand all of that. So if I leave it up to someone else, it could be to a point where I'll wait forever and then I have to find someone else there, someone else there. Because it happened to me before. And I just took it in my own sort of grasp to just do it myself. And not only that, I learned over time that a lot of choices I make directing and filming is directly related to how I edit it later. So the only way I could understand the movie the way I filmed it and shot it is me to do the editing of it. And
Exactly.
I've learned over time I work better that way. Um, and like I said, in the future tense, I'm sure I'm going to meet someone who way better than me in a lot of these things. I hope I do. But in the meantime, I never want to tell myself I can't do something. And to tell yourself you can't make and finish your own movie without others involved, it kind of doesn't bring the filmmaker idea involved with how I feel the term is used. And so, it's hard for me to answer that question because I could tell, you know, I could tell everybody, like, yeah, the only way you're going to get it is, really you just got to learn everything yourself. And like I said, that's a hard ask for anybody to do. Like, it was a hard ask for me to do. But and over the years, I've been very, I don't want to say obsessed, but I've been so detailed oriented about how other directors do it in Hollywood and how I like to do it, and like the things I want to compete against and the things I don't care to compete against. And this is one of the things where you realize, like, you got to pick your own battles. And you know if you're trying to make a film that's uniquely you, then learn how to edit, film, write, that's uniquely you. And the best case of doing that is to teach yourself. Because you can go to a college and learn everything, but then you're kind of learning from another set of eyes, and not that I'm saying it's a bad thing, but I also think it kind of takes away from your sort of breakthroughs, like a lot of people that create like huge dynamics and breakthroughs in life are usually people who think outside of everybody else. And, and the best way to do that is to think for yourself. And I just started thinking for myself on how to do these things. And, I take advice here and there, but by the end of the day, it was
You're
just
like,
one of
but
those.
most of the time not.
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah, and
what
it's just
you're
one of those things
saying,
where,
what you're
yeah.
saying is important, Pat. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, like, yeah, it's better to be confident in everything that you want to accomplish, and filmmaking is such a hard task where there's so many things involved, and it's hard to be confident in any of it. But um, yeah, you just really need to. I wouldn't even think of it as confidence. Just know that you can do it. Like, you don't have to be confident in it. Eventually, you will be. Like, I didn't think I was confident in doing any of this stuff, and I won a lot of awards for these things, and it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I didn't think I could do that because when I made the movie, I wasn't thinking of
Right,
I wasn't thinking of awards. I wasn't thinking of like, I was just thinking, how do I make a movie where someone from another country would enjoy it?
right.
I didn't know how many countries would enjoy it. I didn't know how
With
many
with
people.
that
Yeah,
with that being said,
yeah,
I think if people, because a lot of people have messaged me and they're actors and they've never produced, and I've produced, acted, and written my own films. And the way I
right.
think of it now is like, if someone is gonna mess up, it might as well be you.
Yes, yeah,
Because if you don't do it yourself, you're giving everyone else the opportunity to practice on your project, and that is fine. But like, understand that no one is perfect, and so if someone is gonna learn whatever craft you're trying to, you know, put into this film, it could be you.
mm,
However, if you're an actor and you're already producing and you're already writing, I always suggest find a director and find a crew, at least,
yeah,
a couple of people that can take those positions. But just like you said with your writing, it's so important that you listen to your conscience and really get to know people, and not just because they made films, not just because their resume looks great. You have to be a good partner, like you have to be a good match, or
right,
else your project will go sour.
yeah, yeah,
um and you were talking about, maybe at the beginning not believing in yourself, which is what happens to everybody. We're like, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going, and I think it's all of us.
right.
I found myself in the middle of the project being like, okay, I don't even know what I'm doing, but we're doing it. What would you say throughout your career has been your biggest moment of fear?
Biggest moment of fear.
Yes, that moment where you're like, I can't do this. I don't, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, I've had moments, and it's usually like it's my biggest fear. in any of these film stuff is basically an actor walking away unsatisfied with being a part of my picture.
Mm.
Because it's just one of those moments where it's like you really put them through all this stuff. You really want them to take pride with it and take it with them as a token to like what they accomplish in life. Like the worst thing, and I've seen so many times is when, and I hear it so many times when actors are part of these films and they tell themselves like, I wish I wasn't in that movie, I wish I wouldn't wasted my time in that, or they tell themselves like, I didn't care, like the director didn't talk to me for the rest of the time, and like they had such a terrible experience. And that's the thing that I fear the most, is when someone who's a part of the project feels like they're not a part of the project. Um, and it happens a lot. Like I've heard actors talk about how, yeah, the director, you know, the director never told us where the movie went or if I won awards or anything like that. Like they'll find out through me somehow. And I was like, yeah, I want to be completely transparent with what the film is, where it's going, and where I want it to go, and I'll show you guys exactly where it goes. Um, because there's a lot of times where an actor would be a part of a movie and they'll never hear anything about it ever again. And a lot of times those movies, they don't get far. And the reason why they don't get far is because if you can't spread awareness of your film with the people in your film, like how can you spread awareness to the people outside of film? Like if you can't concentrate on just that core, I can't imagine how you'd be successful with people who weren't a part of it. Like you really have to be very um, open to communication of how where the movie's going and how you feel about the movie and how your actors feel about the movie for you to actually be completely satisfied with the project. Even as a director, some directors, they don't care for any of that. Like for me, it's really home for me because if you can't feel like, it kind of takes away from the joy of doing things if you realize like someone's out there wishing they were never a part of it, or wishing that because I have actors, one time they would show up to the set and before they even do anything on the set, they started cursing it out. I was like, why did I drive here, blah 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 blah. This is before we even filmed anything. um and I literally had to I told the actor he could go home, and we recasted him, and we wasted a whole day on that. And it was a terrible experience because, like, honestly, I don't know what he was upset about. I imagine it had nothing to do with me. I imagine it had nothing to do with the film, but the fact that you came with the attitude and it makes it so demoralizing for everybody that's a part of it. And you sit there and you watch it, and it's like, you know, that's the memory you get from the movie. And like that's not something that you want, because you want to be able to be free to be so energetic and amazed by your own work. Yeah. The last thing you want is to have these like dreadful stuff about what you did. So like, yeah, that's the biggest fear, is basically someone walking away wishing they never did any of it, wishing they were never part of it, and wishing that that it didn't help at all. Because even like Hollywood actors, like they have these movies where like they're inside a movie, and they have their great movies where they talk about all the time, and then like in one sort of this interview where they're like, so what's the role that you regret? You never want to be that role. You never want to be that. Like that's the worst. And like I refuse for that to happen to me, regardless whatever I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the thing that I want to stay away from, like forever if I can. And I've tried my hardest to make sure that a lot of people who are part of the project walk away with the idea like I'm there, like I want to be your favorite filmmaker. I want to be your favorite director. Like I want to be the person that you wish, oh God, I wish I was on Pat's set right now. This is ridiculous. Like I want to be that memory, Yeah. And it happens a lot. Like it happens to me. Like, you would be on a set and it's like, I wish I was, there's that one person that you wish was around because it makes everything so much better. That's the type of like the people I want to be around, and that's the type of person I want to be. So, yeah, like that's something that I thrive for.
I think that's also crucial because a lot of people, that's why I said it's important that you speak to the people that you're going to work with, but not only crew, also cast, and make sure that not only they are good actors, but that they're going to be a good match for you in your set,
Hmm.
in the way you work.
Yeah.
Because if not, if you're paying a crew and you're organizing everything, food, all kinds of things, and you have to recast, and you're only going to shoot for 2 days, then
Right.
it messes up your entire thing. So it's important pre-production in general. If it's going to be your first film, it's a lot easier if we can really take the time to get to know people better so that we don't go through these things. And
Hmm.
if I know that everything was necessary to get you here, but if you would have to redo something, a hack that you learned that now you know, like of something that you could have done differently that would have advanced you a little bit more or made it a little bit easier on you, what would that be?
Um, it's interesting. The one, like the things I really want to do, and it's funny because I can't. I wish I would. Every director, every filmmaker says the same thing. They wish that there was more resources to gain access to funding where you could do things that you want to do, but just have an upgrade in some of the resources that you have. Um, that's the one thing that I regret is not having those resources. But it's like, where do you find them if you don't figure
Invest
out what you're
first.
doing with what you have? Exactly. And like, so you can't really regret it. And I think the one thing that I wish I did differently, if I ever did, was, um, I guess to pay more attention to, I guess pay more attention to like how to, I guess how to read a room. Cause there's a lot of people that you kind of meet and like I've been in festivals. Like there's one festival I went to, and you're talking to somebody, and like you're just kind of having a good time and everything. And then, like I said, with the whole awards thing, I ran into someone who was like much older than me, and he invested into a movie that he did, and he spent way more money than I did, and you know, he won his first prize. He's his first like award that he's ever did at a festival. But I made the mistake and talked about my film, my budget, and how many awards I won before I learned his story. And you know, the the looks you get from someone who, yeah, and it's just one of those things where you kind of remember it because it's just one of those things. Like me, I guess I'm very, very empathetic. Like I could feel people, and I could feel when I disturb someone, or I could feel when I hit a button, and like you never meant to.
Yeah,
I know you kind of feel bad after the case because it's like if I would have known, like I wouldn't be bragging about it so much.
yeah.
Because it is, like I said, you're deserving to whatever you accomplish, and not one person should take it away from you. And I understand some of those problems are not problems that I should have, but when you run into them, you don't know what to do after because it's like it's not something that you intended, and it's like, and it's one of those worst kind of feelings because it's like you kind of sink into a hole. It's like, did I really just do that to that person? Like I know I didn't want to. And like, and then, if you're not aware of doing that, you could potentially stop someone from ever trying to do anything ever again. And
Or
those are the things that,
or
yeah,
you could possibly, I mean, I think a lot of people, and I think also this is important for you to know, like a lot of
yeah,
people will get upset because they're still in the old era, which was competition.
Right.
It's 2024, and this is the era of collaboration, not competition. So
Right.
we have to use all of our resources, social media, everything that we can to collaborate and really use it to our advantage rather than trying to push down people. But
Mm-hmm.
even if people get bothered or upset, that might also make them feel like there is more that they can do. So maybe you're seeing it from the perspective that they could be discouraged, but maybe people that are competitive are encouraged by your words, even though they get upset, because I see it from the perspective of, oh, wow, look at those wins. Then it's
Mm-hmm.
possible. You
Mm-hmm.
can do more. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of, people are like, okay, I only had two, you have 300, but that's hope that you're bringing into this creative world. That's how everyone should see it. And I think that at the end of the day, everyone will end up at that point and feeling that way about seeing someone succeed, because you think, if others can do it, I can also do it. Instead, how can I get there is the
Yeah, and
question.
I really hope for that. Like because when I do anything, like I do like a lot of creative stuff, a lot of not creative stuff. I never see myself as competition for people. Like I don't. A part of me doesn't care to compete.
Yeah.
And then when I do things, I don't think I'm never looking at the other guy. It's like I have too much on my own plate to start looking at other people, wondering where I am compared to because if I do that, believe me, I only compare myself to like my childhood heroes, which I like. They're huger, bigger directors. Um,
Right.
and that's all I compare myself to. And like I said, I put myself down so many times, so hard, so fast. Um, it's to a point where it's like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't be doing that. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
worst thing. But like, to be honest, I would never succeed in how much I've done if I didn't tell myself I have to be able to do what they do, even with what I have. And, it really helps because some people tell me, oh, I can't even tell the difference between you and this other director who's using $500 million to do something. And I was like, oh, that really makes me feel good. But yeah, like when it comes to like indie filmmakers and stuff, like I encourage everybody to do the best they can, regardless of what it is. Like the only thing that we're all competing against here is the biggest people in the world who are doing this. And that's every independent filmmaker.
Yeah.
There's not one reason I should compete against this filmmaker and that filmmaker when we're both using the same exact resources and trying to do the best of what we can with them. And so yeah, I compete against the people who have everything,
Yeah.
and then you start realizing like sometimes having everything really doesn't help. And I mentioned this before to other people. If you're in a creative aspect,
You have less
the
control.
yeah, when you the best creative decisions are the decisions you make when you don't have the resources to do something.
Yeah.
So that's when you have to start thinking creatively. So if you're in a creative business and you're trying to do something that costs $1 million, you effectively use your creativity to do it. And if you had $1 million, you'll kind of just buy your way doing it, and there's no creativity at all in it. And that's the biggest learning curve that people have. Like that's how you learn the fastest is to creatively find solutions for something when you don't have the solution. And in Hollywood, like I'm not going to knock with any of those filmmakers. Like they could turn $100 million into $100 billion. Like it's the same difference between turning $100,000 or let me say like $1,200 to something that looks like $1 million to like someone spending $10 million to making it 80 million and then $100 million to make $1 billion movie. Like it's the same goal in mind. And you know the more money you use, like the bigger the production, like the profits get. But there's some people out there. So the worst filmmakers, like if you want to define like a really bad filmmaker, look at the budget that they spent and then look at the movie and think how much did they use making it.
Yeah.
So there's movies out there that cost $200 million and it looks like a $90 million movie or even less. And it's like, why would I even bother? Like, that's when you know you need to go back to the editor
But
or
that's
just to
why,
learn
but that's
something new.
why,
Yeah.
but that's why I think it's so important that rather than you have those people that you look up to for inspiration and
Right.
kind of competition too, because you're like, I could probably do that. I can't do that. But the biggest competition that we will always have is ourselves. Is what
Oh,
is it
yeah.
that I can do with the resources that I was given in general, like,
Yeah.
whatever I was brought up, everything that I was given, what can I do with myself? And
Yeah.
then we're competing. I was just actually um, telling on a story or a video there that I am not the same Sarah that started this year. Like the Sarah in January of 2024 has nothing to do with the Sarah today.
Right.
Even more, December is craziness.
Right.
Everything has changed. And so the person that we should be competing with is our old self. Have we improved? How much closer are we getting to whatever our goal is every year, and how much harder are we working toward that every year? If that is something that you want to do and accomplish, what is it? What's next for you? What are you working on now?
Yeah. So, um, I was working on a couple things. Some things didn't work out as well as I wanted, but still opens up an opportunity to something later. But right now, I am working on a feature film that I wrote. It's called Lako. It's on IMDb Pro. Basically, I optioned it, and I'm set to be director of it. But a lot of the other sort of, the funding, the casting, and all that stuff is still set to be determined, and still working on it. But yeah, I'm working on a feature film right now, and basically, it's a movie. It's a it's a broken marriage story that
Nice.
takes place during a road trip after Hurricane Ian. So there's a thriller element to it. There's a romance element to it. There's a psychological element to it. This time it's shot in the day, and it's there's comedy to it. There's a lot
So
of everything in it,
does
and
that is your location the car?
yes,
Nice.
inside the car.
Very nice.
And it's actually a moving vehicle, so like I kind of take inspiration of it's like my miniature version of Titanic. So Titanic is basically about this love triangle that takes place inside a moving vehicle that happens to have a disaster on its way. My movie is sort of the same thing. It's a love triangle within a moving vehicle, and there's obstacles that happen along the way. And yeah, and it's basically taking that design and shrinking it into something that's more of an indie feel. But yeah, so like I'm always compelled to write like these sort of, and like everything I ever write is always contained. Like I don't like being too, like I don't like writing like more than a few characters. Like I hate, like I watch movies where they kind of throw like 16 characters in a movie and just for the sake of scope, and it's like none of these characters really have any sort of story between them. So like what's really cool for me, like when I write my stories, I always try to contain it into very short, like sort of smaller characters so you get full time and awareness of these characters based on how much time you have. And
Yeah.
um yeah, for instance, the Apples, Oranges, Lemons, Limes, there's five main characters. I think five, six, yeah.
Nice.
Two of them is you like 80% of the movie is just two of them. And it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, the reason why it works so well is because you're so invested in those two characters and those two characters alone. There's not like a multitude of characters where you have to like separate your like conscious or your awareness to these characters or where the story is. And so for that movie, it was always great to like start it where it's a group of people that you recognize, and then you kind of get slower into the two of them you pluck out and you create a deeper story with that. Like, and it's funny because in my movie, like, there's an opportunity where I could take the other two characters and have them walk home, and it'll be a whole different story.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, and like I thought about it the other day. If I took Guan, who's an actor, and Valeria, who's an actor, if I took those two characters and had them walk home, whole different sort of mindset because they have so many, they have different like attitudes and sort of different like quirks about them. And that would be an entertaining movie, but it's funny because it's nice when you know your characters so well, you get to explore what they're thinking. And, they
Yeah.
basically, yeah, they call it, what is it? There was a review that talked about it. It's character study of what a character would be and how he'll become, or the things that he can do and the things that he shouldn't do. You're basically creating a character study, and you know your characters well enough to be able to create those things. Um, if you don't know your character, it kind of gets to a point where that's when you get writer's block. It's like
That's
it's
when
kind
you get everything.
of, yeah,
Because
yeah,
if you if you know your character, you can place them on any story and they'll behave the same way as per
exactly.
their persona or as
Yeah,
per themselves,
yeah,
rather
yeah.
than, if you put them in the movie theaters rather than on a, on a track field, they would
Hmm.
still be
Yeah,
Valeria and Juan.
exactly.
So
And
it's so
yeah,
powerful.
and it's actually, yeah, and like, yeah. So a lot of the films, yeah, I do make a lot of character driven films, and a lot of people make the plot driven films, or like me, it's always you start with the character and then you put them in a environment and then see how they act in an environment.
Yeah.
Some other filmmakers, they start with the environment and then you start throwing actors in it, and then it comes to a point where the characters are so one dimensional because you're trying to fit it in this environment. Like it's always like, it's just the way you think of it. It's so much better to start with the character and everything about the character, and then throw them into an environment and feel like, is it sink or swim? Is he
Yeah.
gonna survive in here or is he not? Yeah.
For
Um,
sure.
and then like, yeah, so but there is like other movies where when people write period pieces and stuff, you always that's when it gets kind of creative because like I dealt with rewriting a film that took place in the 60s, and
Mm,
you realize like, okay, the environment plays a heavy part in how these characters act. So there you actually have the freedom to think more about the environment than the character, because a lot of people, yeah, like you're reminiscing on that time period. That's the only reason why you watch the movie, is because you want to remember those times, like Victorian era and all this stuff. So you would write like the times, and then you write the characters within those times.
yeah.
But I think it's when you're doing a contemporary story like today, you know, the environment's the same. Like we're all living
Everyone
it.
understands, right?
Yeah, everyone understands it. So it's nothing that you're trying to
Explain.
recapture.
How
Exactly.
uh, how far along are you with this project? When do you see yourself shooting it?
Oh, that's still to be determined. Like we had a date. But then we had difficulties in landing actors, and then we had some complications with investors, and then we ended up having to withdraw and start again and look again through things. Like we were supposed to be filming the film already, um, and then we kind of just held off because of environmental things. Like right now we have a hurricane, and
Mhm.
a lot of these things aren't like aligning exactly the way we want it to. And so we're basically looking for the investments again and making sure all of it's sound. And, I want to film it before the year ends, but I don't think that's going to happen. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping it'd be just beginning of next year, possibly, but there's no real solid plans. We just know right now we just have the script. We have the script, the pitch deck, the PPMs, and like basically like star actors, like a short list of actors that we want to approach with it.
Yeah.
And right now we're just trying to figure that stuff out. So that is, and then, that was going to be a great shoot because it's very contained. It's a very contained story. It takes place in a very contained setting, and the biggest scene I have in that movie is, like I'm a part of me wants to win an Oscar for this one, so I wrote things as like, hope, we'll figure it out somehow. Like, I've seen directors win Oscars with movies that cost less than $1 million. So let me not act like I can't do that. So yeah, we wrote some scenes that hopefully we figure out how to do it. But yeah, it was just one of those things that, we're just trying to take our time with it, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can
For
through
sure.
the producers, because I'm so bad with the business side of things. I'm so good with the creative part. Like, even, and I can't say I'm bad with the business side of things, but because I've kind of grew the movie to be very out there, and apples, oranges, and limes. Like, I took all those burdens on my own. Like, trying to get the movie out there and do these things and do all of it. Like, I did it on myself because I really just wanted to make sure it was done in a way, like, I'm not sabotaging in a way. Because I imagine if I just, because even like with, um, because I put it on Film Hub for distribution, and I decided to self distribute the movie because I basically did everything else myself. And I told myself, like, I would hate it if I gave the movie to somebody and they cut 15 minutes of it and had some other, uh, you know, some other sound design expert or do all these other sound designs that's so
Right.
far from the original stuff. And yeah, so I just told myself, let me just see it through myself.
And
But
how
but
is it doing on Film Hub?
it's it's doing pretty well. It's not great, and I don't know how to make it any better.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's slowly picking up, uh, and I'm hoping that, and I honestly think I won't see, the alarming profits that I want until I do my other movie.
Yeah,
Like, it's always one of those things.
I
Yeah,
think in order to be profitable, I think most films that do well on festivals
right,
actually are stories that you can relate to and are more artsy.
right,
And so that it's a little bit harder, and it's happened to me as well, where it does so well in festivals, but then to sell it, it's not as commercial as other things that are just packaged and basically have the same beginning, middle, and end of every single other movie. So,
yes.
but
I started watching. I watched one of your films. I didn't finish it though, but you had a film on Tubi. It was Spanish speaking
yes,
film on Tubi. Yeah, I was watching that. Was that in festivals?
that was in festivals.
Okay, no,
We
I
did
actually, yeah, I
he
know. I really have to watch it again because I wanted to, like, make sure I was like kind of prepared to know who I'm talking to. And I actually really liked the movie. I just didn't have enough time to watch everything. I will, and I'll let you know what I
yeah,
think.
yeah,
Um,
for
but
sure.
yeah, no,
Um, uh,
I saw that one of your films was on Tubi, so I made an effort to look at. I have it under my watch list. I will finish it though.
yeah, and we'll stay in touch. I mean, please let us know whenever you get the other one going or whatever. I'm here for you, and I appreciate you for coming on the live because I think this is very valuable information that I wish I would have had 10 years ago.
Oh
And it would have
yeah,
probably made my path and yours a little bit easier. And that is the reason for having producing actors. We're all in this. We're all a community, even though we're separated and everyone wants to do their own thing. We're going through the same journey. So if we can collaborate and tell one another, hey, it's easier this way, it's easier that way, we'll get there faster together.
right, right, right. Yeah, no, definitely. And thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I came across your page, and I just, like, you always had like these sort of positive notes about, and I was like, oh, I need to watch some of these because I need to remember these things. Yeah, like, I think everybody goes through those times where it's like, oh God, everything's going badly. Like, and it helps. Thank you for those videos.
Absolutely,
They
my
really do put
pleasure.
your mind back into positivity of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes whenever I'm shooting something like that, it's because I needed to hear it. And
Yeah.
sometimes because I hear someone needing to hear it. So I remember, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put this out there, because you never know. And I really look forward to watching more of your stuff. Thank you so much again. And stay in touch.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Pat. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.